Shalom, 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 Yasha'Allah. This is your boy, Brother Shamwa Allah, back at you with another quick edifying video. Today it's just going to be a lesson. I'm going to read an article of reactions of the world, right, on the U.S., right, attack on Iran, all right. So just read the world reacts, all right. That's going to be the title of the lesson, all right. And we're just going to read an article, all right. But first and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory. I want to say, Halal, Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rawchaa, Qadash. That's all praises to the Heavenly Father, whose name is Yahawah, and his only begotten Son's name, who you ignorantly call Jesus, whose name is Yahawashi. All right, and the Holy Spirit, which is the Rawchaa Qadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who have ruled well to the Spirit, and have fed and edified the sheep in these last days, and has pushed this gospel and this truth to the four corners of the earth in these last days. A mighty shalom. Another mighty shalom to all you Akim out there laboring on the highways and on the hedges and on the unicorn, which is this internet, pushing this 100% doctrine, this 100% truth to the four corners of the earth in these last days. Mighty shalom to you all as well. All right, so I just want to, go over. I saw this is from Al Jazeera. It says, world reacts to U.S., right, or Babylon's attack on Persia. Okay. Let's see. So it says the United States has bombed 3 nuclear sites in Iran, further escalating the war between Israel and Iran. President Donald Trump, late Saturday, said the U.S. obliterated the Iranian facilities in Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz. It says as he threatened more strikes to eliminate the country's nuclear enrichment capacity. It says if Tehran does not make peace, Iran acknowledged the attack, saying its personnel working at the nuclear sites were evacuated before the attacks. It says the strikes, and just on that note too, I was watching another video where they were showing days before they were you saw all these trucks moving this, evidently like moving some of this stuff. So it might not even be, what, they thought it was. Okay. But it says the U.S. strikes came more than a week after Israel launched a military campaign against Iran, which retaliated with missile attacks, resulting in hundreds of casualties on both sides. Here are some key reactions, all right, around the world following the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. So Iran, in its first public remarks after the strikes, Iranian Minister and Foreign Affairs Abbas Arghachi, I don't know if that's right, Salakia, accused the U.S. of breaching international law. It says Babylon, a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, has committed a grave violation of the UN Charter, international law, and nuclear non-proliferation treaty by attacking Iran's peaceful nuclear installations. It says, said in a social media statement, says the events this morning are outrageous and will have everlasting consequences. Each and every member of the UN must be alarmed over this extremely dangerous, lawless, criminal behavior. He added that Persia reserves all options to defend its sovereignty, interests, interests, and people. All right. And then you have Amalek says, congratulations, President Nero. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of Babylon will change history, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a televised statement. It says history will record that President Nero acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. It says the UN, United Nations, says, I am gravely alarmed by the use of force by the United States against Persia today, Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, "This is a dangerous escalation in the region already on the edge and a direct threat to international peace and security." He said by adding, "There is a growing risk that the conflict could rapidly get out of control." It says, with catastrophic consequences for civilians in the region and the world. It says Gutierrez also called on member states to de-escalate and uphold their obligation under the UN Charter and other rules of international law. At this perilous hour, it is crucial to avoid a spiral of chaos. There is no military solution. The only path forward is diplomacy. The only hope is peace. Well, it's not happening. All right. The Hamas said the Palestinians armed group said said it condemned the strongest terms the brazen aggression of Babylon against the territory of the sovereignty of Iran. It says the U.S. Aggression against Persia is dangerous escalation, blind obedience to the occupiers' agenda, and a clear violation of international law. All right. It says we declare our solidarity with Persia, its leadership, and its people, and we have full confidence in Iran's ability to defend its sovereignty. Saudi Arabia expressed its great concern following the U.S. attacks. According to the statement by foreign ministries on X, it says the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is following with great concern the developments in the sisterly Islamic Republic of Persia, represented by the targeting of Iranian nuclear facilities by the United States of America. The Saudi Foreign Ministry posted on X. It says the kingdom expresses the need to exert all efforts to exercise restraint, to de-escalate and avoid escalation, calling on international community to boost efforts in such highly sensitive circumstances to reach a political solution to end the crisis. In Qatar, it says it fears serious repercussions after the U.S. airstrikes on the nuclear facilities in Iran. It says the foreign ministry warns that current dangerous escalations in the region may lead to catastrophic consequences at both the regional and international levels. A statement said it calls on all parties to exercise wisdom, restraint, and to avoid further escalation. Oman, which was the mediating nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran, has strongly condemned the U.S. Strikes. It says the Gulf state expressed deep concern. The denunciation and condemnation of the escalation resulting from the direct airstrike launched by Babylon on sites in the Islamic Republic of Iran. The official Oman news agency said, it says Iraq has warned Babylon's attack on its neighbor Iran's nuclear facilities threatens peace and stability in the Middle East. This military escalation constitutes a grave threat to peace and security in the Middle East and poses serious risk to regional stability, the government spokesman Bahasham Alawadi said. Russia's foreign ministry said it strongly condemns the U.S. attacks on Iran, the irresponsible decision to subject the territory of a sovereign state to missiles and bomb attacks, whatever the argument it may be presented with, flagrantly violates international law, the Charter of the United Nations of Resolutions of the United Nations Security Council. The ministry said in its statement, we call for an end to aggression and for increased efforts to create conditions for returning the situation to a political and diplomatic track. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer urged Persia to return to negotiating table and said that stability in the region remained a priority. According to the statement from Downing Street, Persia's nuclear program is a grave threat to international security. Persia can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon, and the U.S. has taken action to alleviate the threat, Starmer said in a statement. All right, the EU. The EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has called for de-escalation and a return to negotiations. I urge all sides to step back, returning to the negotiating table and prevent further escalations. Kallas wrote on the X, adding Persia must not be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon and that the EU foreign ministers will discuss the situation on Monday. Now you see how some of these nations are talking. Some are just outright condemning it. Then you have some who are, just totally ignoring it and saying, Iran needs to go back to negotiating, right? Or some are just like, they don't need weapons. So it kind of just shows you what's going on, right? All right, let's keep reading. So France Foreign Minister Jean-Noel Barrot has expressed concern and urged the parties to exercise restraint to avoid any escalation likely to lead to an extension of the conflict. In a statement, it says, convinced that a lasting solution to this issue requires negotiated solution within the framework of non-proliferation treaty. Germany Chancellor Friedrich Merz has called on Persia to immediately re-enter nuclear talks with Babylon. There can be a diplomatic solution, according to government spokesman. The Chancellor and Security Cabinet Minister will coordinate closely with their European Union and U.S. partners throughout the day, spokesman Stefan Cornelius said in a statement. Italy says, now we hope that after this attack, which caused massive damage to the nuclear weapons production and posed a threat to the entire region, a de-escalation can begin and Iran can sit down at the negotiating table. Italy's Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani told state broadcaster Switzerland. So Switzerland has urged all parties to exercise maximum restraint and immediately return to diplomacy after the United States joined Israel's war with Tehran by striking Iranian nuclear sites. Switzerland emphasizes the importance of a full respect for international law, including the UN Charter and international humanitarian law, the foreign ministry said on the website. U.S. Democrats. So the top Democrats in the House of the Representatives accused Trump of pushing the country towards war. President Nero misled the country about his intentions, failed to seek the congressional authorization for the use of military force, and risked American entanglement in the potentially disastrous war in the Middle East, Congress Hakeem Jeffries said in a statement. It says, Nero shoulders complete and total responsibility for any adverse consequences that flow from the unilateral military action. So U.S. groups CAR and AIPAC, right? The Council of American Islamic Relations, a U.S. Muslim rights group, said the U.S. attack is an illegal and unjustified act of war that comes under pressure from out of control Israeli government, and despite the long-standing conclusion of the U.S. intelligence that Persia was not building a nuclear weapon. It says, on the other hand, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, a powerful pro-Israel group in the U.S., praised the strikes ordered by Trump and said the U.S. must now work with our allies to protect our troops and regional interests against Iranian attacks. All right, here's China. So China says a flash commentary from China's government-run media asked whether the U.S. is repeating its Iraq mistake in Iran. It says the online piece of the CGTN, the foreign language arm of the state board broadcaster, said the U.S. strikes mark dangerous turning point. History has repeatedly shown the military interventions in the Middle Eastern produce unintended consequences, including prolonged conflicts and regional destabilization, it said, citing American invasion of Iraq in 2003. It says it is a measured diplomatic approach that prioritizes dialogue over military confrontation over the best hope of stability in the Middle East. Japan says the Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba told reporters that it is crucial that there is a quick de-escalation of the conflict. We are closely monitoring the situation there with grave concern. ICAN, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, says the U.S. military strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities were senseless and reckless. By joining Israel's attack on Iran, the U.S. is also breaking international law. It says military actions against Iran is not the way to resolve concerns over Tehran's nuclear program. Given the U.S. intelligence agencies assesses Persia is not pursuing nuclear weapons, this is a senseless and reckless act that could undermine international efforts to prevent the further proliferation of nuclear weapons. Geneva-based ICAN won 2017 Nobel Peace Prize for its key role in its drafting the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, which took effect in 2021. Some 69 countries have ratified it to date. 4 more have directly acceded to the treaty, and another 25 have signed it, although none of the nuclear weapon states have come on board. Australia says we have been clear that Persia's nuclear and ballistic missile program has been a threat to international peace and security. All right. We note that the president's statement that now is the time for peace, adding that the security situation in the region is highly volatile. We continue to call for de-escalation, dialogue, and diplomacy. New Zealand, we acknowledge the developments in the last 24 hours, including President Nero's announcement of the U.S. strikes on nuclear facilities in Persia. Foreign Minister Winston Peters, ongoing military action in the Middle East is extremely worrying and is critical. Further escalation is avoided, he said. Strongly supports efforts towards diplomacy. Mexico says the ministry urgently calls for diplomatic dialogue for peace between the parties involved in the Middle East. Mexico's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on their X account, it says, in keeping in our constitutional principles of foreign policy and our country's pacifist conviction, we reiterate our call to de-escalate tensions in the region. The restoration of peaceful coexistence among the states of the region is the highest priority. Venezuela says Venezuela condemns the U.S. military aggression against Iran and demands an immediate cessation of hostilities. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ivan Gil said in a Telegram post, it says the Bolivian Republic of Venezuela firmly and categorically condemns the bombing carried out by Babylon military at the request of the State of Israel against nuclear facilities in the Islamic Republic of Iran, including Fordo, Natanz, and Ishfan complexes. Cuba. So Cuba President Miguel Diaz-Canel strongly condemned the U.S. bombing, saying it constituted a dangerous escalation and a serious violation of the UN Charter. He added, it plunges humanity into a crisis with irreversible consequences. Chilean President Gabriel Boric also called the U.S. action illegal. Chile condemns this U.S. attack. Having power does not authorize you to use it in a violation of the rules that we as humanity have given ourselves, even if you are Babylon, right? The great city Babylon, right? So you have, you have some people who pick their sides. You have some people who are playing the fence, and you have some people who, are condemning, So you just have that. I just wanted to kind of read that, I thought that was a good little thing. All right. But ultimately, nothing's going to stop, eventually the war is going to come. Okay. Eventually the war will come. All right. Let's get that real quick. Revelation 11 and verse number 14, it says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Okay. And those woes are talking about world wars. Okay. The second world war has already passed, and behold, the third world war cometh quickly. Okay. And we know that war, we continue to go over it. It's going to be fought with nuclear fire. All right. This is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 5. It says, for every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. It says, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. All right. And what is that? It's talking about those nuclear weapons. Okay. Those ICBM missiles with the nuclear warheads. All right. And ultimately, it all comes from Yahawah. All right, because he created this weapon. All right, for his purpose, and the purpose is going to be fulfilled. All right. This is Isaiah chapter 54, verse 16. It says, behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy. Okay, and that waster is talking about those nuclear warheads. Okay, those ICBM missiles, right? Or what the scripture talks about are the arrows. All right, or the plague, right? But this is, this is talking about here, that the Yahawah created these scientists to do what? To create this weapon, to create this weaponry. All right, and he's going to use it. Okay. It's going to be used. All right. We go to Isaiah 55 and 11. It says, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in everything whereto I sent it. Okay. So wherever, the words of Yahawah, they go forth and they're going to accomplish it. Okay. So the second woe has passed, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Okay. Yahawah has created the waster to destroy. And what is it going to do? It's going to destroy. All right. So you can talk about peace talks and this, that, and the other, but ultimately, this weaponry is going to be used. Okay. When you go into Jeremiah, it says, spare no arrows, and when you go into Second Ezra, it talks about that kind of the same thing, that they won't miss. All right. They're going to hit their target. They're going to do the purpose that Yahawah has set up for them. Okay. And Babylon, right, who wants to get involved now, right, they're going to be utterly destroyed. Okay. This place is going to become desolate. All right, because ultimately, these nations, you know, uh, they hate this place. All right. Let's go to that Jeremiah. What is that? Jeremiah 50. Let's see. It might be 51, Salakia. Jeremiah 51. In verse 7. Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 7, it says, Babylon have been a golden cup in Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi's hand, and have made all the earth drunken, and the nations have drunken of her wine. It says, therefore the nations are mad. Okay? And they're mad at this place, man. Right? And continue. All right? You got the cruel Lord, all right, ruling over, and he's making folks, he's been pissing folks off since day one. All right. Setting up tariffs, doing all these different things. Okay. And he's holding up to his nature. All right. And ultimately this place is going to be utterly destroyed. All right. And those weaponries, right? The Lord said he's going to open his armory, right? Which are these weapons, hey? And this is this place eventually is going to be destroyed, and they're going to use these weapons. All right. So, I say I don't want to make this too long, right? But I just wanted to kind of go over that article just to show, what, the different nations of the earth were saying, about, this decision. Okay. So, Lord's will, this was edifying, right? But with that, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory. I want to say, call Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Qadash. Peace and blessings to the elect of the 12 tribes scattered abroad, and mighty shalom to the 144,000 men. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who have ruled well through the Spirit and have fed and edified the sheep in these last days. Another mighty shalom to the rest of the elect, man. Stay diligent, stay focused, keep watching, okay? Keep praying, all right? And hold fast to the faith. Let this wisdom and knowledge be your stability of these times, okay? Remember, this stuff is going to be like a woman giving birth. She's having contractions. All right, so things are going to continue. They're going to escalate and get quicker and quicker, okay? Until ultimately, destruction upon Babylon, right? And the return of Yahawashi, all right? So with that, like I said, I'll say, call Halal Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Qadash, Abba, and Shalom.